Hi, and welcome to your podcast. And if you're new here, this is your space where we talk about human behavior, emotions, and real connections. Simply, honestly, and without filters. No pretending, no pressure, just real conversations about what it means to be human. And to start this episode, let me ask you something. Have you ever been told you think too much? Maybe someone said it casually. Maybe they meant it as advice. Or maybe it landed like a quiet criticism you've been carrying around for years. Because if you're an overthinker, you've probably learned to see that part of yourself as a flaw. Something to control. Something to manage. Something that stands between you and peace. You might have told yourself things like, "Why can't I just let it go? Why do I replay everything? Why does my mind never stop?" But what if I told you that overthinking isn't actually the problem? What if what we call overthinking is really untrained intuition? Today, I want to explore a different perspective, one that might change how you see yourself. Why overthinkers are often deeply intuitive people, and why that gift is so often misunderstood, including by the overthinkers themselves. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let's reframe something you may have been judging yourself for a very long time. Overthinking is usually described as thinking too much, but that definition is misleading. Overthinkers don't necessarily think more than others. They think deeper, broader, and faster. They notice details others miss, subtle changes in someone's tone, a pause before a reply, a facial expression that doesn't quite match the words. Their mind connects dots automatically, often without them even realizing it. And this is crucial to understand. Their mind isn't noisy because it's broken. It's noisy because it's processing a lot of information at the same time. Overthinkers are highly sensitive to patterns, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, relational patterns. They're constantly asking, "What does this mean? Why did that feel different? What's really going on beneath the surface? What's likely to happen next?" That's not dysfunction. That's pattern recognition, which is one of the core traits of intuition. The problem is that society doesn't really teach us how to work with this ability. So instead of being called perceptive or intuitive, people are labeled too much, too sensitive, or too analytical. And that's where the struggle begins. Because if overthinking is actually a form of heightened perception, the real question becomes, why does it feel so exhausting? Why does it create anxiety instead of clarity? Intuition by nature is fast, quiet, subtle. It's a gut feeling, a bodily response, a sense of knowing without a clear explanation. But for many overthinkers, intuition didn't feel safe growing up. Maybe your environment was emotionally unpredictable. Maybe moods changed without warning. Maybe feelings weren't talked about, validated, or welcomed. So instead of being encouraged to feel and trust, you learned to anticipate and analyze. You learned that being one step ahead emotionally felt safer than being surprised. Your intuition adapted. Instead of remaining a quiet inner compass, it became a hyper-alert mental system. You didn't just feel something was off. You analyzed it, replayed it, dissected it, and tried to prepare for every possible outcome. Not because you lacked intuition, but because you didn't trust that intuition alone would protect you. So your mind stepped in to help. Overthinking, in that sense, is not weakness. It's intuition wearing armor. It's a protective response developed over time. And once you see that, self-judgment starts to soften. Because when we understand why overthinking developed, we can begin to see what's been hiding underneath it all along. Here's something intuitive people rarely talk about. They often know things before they can explain them. And that can be deeply uncomfortable, especially in a world that values logic, proof, and justification. So the mind steps in to translate the feeling. You sense something is off in a relationship. Then you replay conversations, reread messages, analyze timing, words, silence. Not to create the intuition, but to validate it. Overthinkers often don't trust the first signal, even though it's usually accurate. They feel first, then they think to confirm. And here's the paradox. The more intuitive you are, the more likely you are to overthink. Because intuition doesn't come with evidence. It just arrives. And thoughtful, intelligent people want certainty. They want reassurance. They want to be right, not just aware. So overthinking becomes an attempt to turn intuition into logic. But something changes when intuition and logic stop fighting each other and start working together. When overthinkers stop trying to silence their mind and instead learn to slow it down, something powerful happens. They realize the intuition was always there, clear, precise, and accurate, just buried under fear, doubt, and the need to explain. Instead of asking, "What else could this mean?" they start asking, "What do I already know?" Instead of looping, they pause. They breathe. They notice what their body is telling them. And when that happens, the mental noise begins to settle. Clarity replaces chaos. Insight replaces anxiety. Overthinkers don't need to become less sensitive. They don't need to shut down their minds. They need grounding. They need safety. They need permission to trust their inner signals. If you're an overthinker, you don't need fixing. You need trust. Trust that your perceptions matter. Trust that not every feeling needs a full investigation. Trust that intuition do. Doesn't shout, it whispers. The goal isn't to stop thinking. It's to notice when thinking has replaced listening. When you learn that difference, everything shifts. Overthinking becomes discernment. Sensitivity becomes wisdom. ND intuition becomes a guide instead of a source of anshi. Eddie, you start working with your mind instead of against it. So how do you know if you're really an overthinker and not just someone who's thoughtful or reflective? Because not all thinking is overthinking. From a psychological perspective, overthinking is closely linked to rumination and anticipatory anxiety. One clear sign is repetitive thought loops. You don't just think about something once, you replay it again and again. Same scenario, same questions, no new answers. Another sign is thinking without resolution. You analyze, but instead of clarity, you feel more tense, more confused, more drained. There's also mental time travel. Spending a lot of time replaying the past or rehearsing the future, rarely fully present. Many overthinkers also experience high emotional sensitivity paired with self-doubt. They pick up on subtle emotional cues, but then immediately question their interpretation. And often there's a strong need for certainty. You want to be sure you're not overreacting. Sure you're not missing something. Sure you won't regret a decision. Neuroscience shows that overthinkers often have a highly active default mode network, the part of the brain involved in self-reflection, memory, and imagination. It's not a flaw. It's a brain that's constantly making connections. But an important distinction to learn is the difference between intuition and overthinking. Intuition feels calm, even when the message is uncomfortable. Overthinking feels urgent, tense, and noisy. Intuition is quick. It arrives once, clearly. Overthinking repeats itself. It spirals. It demands attention. Intuition often shows up in the body first. A tight chest, a sinking feeling, a sense of expansion or contraction. Overthinking lives mostly in the head. Another key difference is that intuition doesn't argue with you. Overthinking does. If your thoughts sound like a debate, what if I'm wrong? But maybe I'm imagining it. What if this means something else? That's not intuition. That's fear trying to control uncertainty. Intuition offers information. Overthinking tries to eliminate risk. And once you learn this distinction, you stop mistaking anxiety for insight. The good news is that you don't need to shut down your mind to stop overthinking. Science shows that overthinking decreases when the nervous system feels safe. Because overthinking isn't really a thinking problem. It's a regulation problem. Grounding the body plays a big role here. Research shows that bringing attention to physical sensation through breathing, movement, or touch reduces rumination. Even something as simple as slow, long exhalations tells the brain, I'm safe right now. Another powerful tool is externalizing thoughts. Writing things down, especially without filtering, reduces mental loops by moving information out of working memory. The brain relaxes when it no longer has to hold everything. Limiting decision fatigue also helps. Overthinkers burn mental energy by overanalyzing small choices. Creating simple routines or default decisions frees cognitive space and lowers anxiety. Learning to pause instead of immediately responding to every thought is another key step. Mindfulness research shows that creating a small gap between stimulus and response dramatically reduces rumination. And finally, self-trust grows through repetition. Each time you act on intuition and see that it was accurate, trust strengthens. Over time, intuition no longer needs armor. So if you recognize yourself in this episode, remember this. Overthinking isn't who you are. It's something your intuition learned to do to survive. And now, it can learn something else. You don't need to become less aware. You don't. You need to become someone new. You just need safety, grounding, and trust. Because beneath the noise, your INTU, Ishan has been clear all along. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next episode.